Hello YouTubers and preppers, I'm Evita Cooks and Preps with the most requested recipe, pan de Mallorca, also known as Puerto Rican sweet bread. This bread recipe is made of rolls or ensaimadas. It is a sweet pastry from the Spanish island of Mallorca, hence the name pan de Mallorca. And it's been said that the bread, often called Puerto Rican sweet bread or roll, bears its name of Mallorcas for their coiled shape, very similar in the shape and appearance of the island of Mallorca in Spain. In truth, no matter what form this bread takes, it is delicious. It's a lightly sweet dough, which became a staple in our beautiful island of Puerto Rico. And today I will share my version of the recipe that I'm certain will become a staple in your home too. Let's get started. Okay, for the bread, I'm going to be using my stand mixer because I have one available. However, you can just as easily mix this batter by hand. The mixer just saves us some time, that's all. And for this recipe, we're going to need 600 grams of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar plus 1 tablespoon, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 package of active dry yeast, which is the equivalent to 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast by measure. I buy my yeast in bulk, which is the reason why I decided to invest in this yeast measuring spoon, which is 2 1/4 teaspoon and the equivalent to 1 package of the active dry yeast. And if you're interested, I'll share the link for the spoon below the video in the description box. We're also going to need a neutral oil. That could be canola oil, grapeseed oil, any type of flavorless oil will be fine. We need some vanilla extract, and I'll be using clear vanilla extract. Egg yolks, and do not throw out your egg whites. You can freeze the egg whites. You can make yourself a healthy omelet. I'm gonna be using my egg whites to make some coconut macaroons later on today. We're also gonna need some warm water and warm milk, and today I'm using evaporated milk. If you don't have evaporated milk, you can substitute with whole milk. Lastly, we need some unsalted butter, and I have some softened unsalted butter right here. Sweet bread. It's a little bit yellowish in color, especially the ones that you buy at the bakeries in Puerto Rico. And if you want your Mallorcas to have that nice yellow color, you can always add a couple of drops of yellow food coloring. I'm gonna be using the Wilton type. I like the paste better than the liquid, but you can either omit the yellow food coloring or use whatever food coloring you have. Actually, you can make them any color you want. I've made the Mallorcas in different colors, especially for catering or parties, and they look absolutely beautiful. It just depends on what you're going to be using them for. This time I'm making them for the church's bake sale. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a sponge with the milk, water, yeast, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. I like to take that added step because that's the best way to know that your yeast is still active. I wouldn't want to waste all these ingredients because I didn't verify. The dough is supposed to be a little bit sticky, but as you can see, it slides very easily from the hook, and that's how you know that the dough is ready. Another way to know is when you run your spatula. Hopefully you can see it there. You see that the dough comes off the sides of the bowl very easily. The good thing about this particular recipe is that you don't have to rest the dough for too long. I always give it about 10 to 15 minutes. So I set up my baker's mat that I've cleaned very well. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a little bit of that oil that we have left over right here. So what we're trying to do is keep it from sticking on the mat and also our hands. If you don't have one of these mats, don't worry about it. You could just do it on your work table. It doesn't really matter. I'm adding a little bit more of the oil, and this time I'm going to be using my hands because I'm also going to grease the tip of my hands to keep the dough from sticking. And my hands are clean, I promise you. Just drop it onto the mat. Now it's gonna be, like I said, a little sticky. Since I greased my fingers, I'm going to grab the dough. And because I have to knead the dough lightly, I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of the oil. I had 2 tablespoons of oil in total. One thing you have to keep in mind is that in baking, especially when you're making breads, the amount of flour that you use is always dependent on the humidity and also the temperature inside the kitchen or your home. That's very important. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of the oil, grease my hands just a little bit more, and just pull the dough together like so. Notice the texture of the dough. Even though it's a sticky dough, it doesn't stick to our hands. And that's exactly what you're looking for in this dough. So I'm just going to fold it like so, just to work it. We don't have to overdo it. I just want to shape it into some type of a rectangle because we're going to roll it, okay? So the easiest way to do that is to fold it into thirds, okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it to be as even as possible. Okay, so the dough is ready and it's been resting for about 15 minutes, and obviously because this is a yeast dough, it's going to ferment and begin to rise, which is fine. I also switched it to a different background because I really want you to see how we roll the dough. The best way to roll dough is to flatten it slightly, and then starting in the middle, roll this way and then to the other side, and as you can see, it keeps its shape. So start in the middle, roll, and then to the other side. Now I'm going to continue doing this until the dough is the size that I'm looking for, and this particular recipe yields about 12 of the pan de Mallorca. So I'm going to continue doing this, like I said, until I can get my dough to about ½ inch thick and also about 12 inches wide. And since I'm making these breads for the bake sale and I have to make about 8 dozen of these, I want to keep the numbers as even as possible. So what I'm looking for, again, like I said, is 12 inches and about 10 to 12 inches wide so that we can cut them evenly. But we're not going to stress over that or overthink it. We're just going to continue working the dough this way from the center out on both directions until we stretch the dough to about a ½ inch thick. And again, using the pieces of wood as a guide, I'm going to continue rolling it and stretching it this way, okay? From the center out, like so. Right now we are at almost, well actually we're at 10 inches. And I'm going to leave it at that because when we roll them, they're actually going to stretch out even more. Next, what we're going to do is cut them to size. And we need 12 pieces. I'm going to use my ruler as the guide. And just mark about 1 inch of the dough so we can cut it into strips. if your dough gets a little bit too soft, I suppose you can put it in the refrigerator. I've never had to do that, to be honest with you. But if for whatever reason your dough is too soft and it's not manageable and it gets a little bit hard or difficult to manage, stick it in the refrigerator for a few minutes, okay? And then work the dough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you 2 ways to shape the pan de Mallorca. You can divide the dough into 12 equal pieces. If you want to get really fancy, you can weigh them individually just to make sure they're even, and then just roll it into a rope, which is actually the traditional way of doing it. However, I like to do things a little fancier. It is a bake sale that I'm going to be making these for, so I want them to look fancy. So what you want to do is take one of the pieces, and this is the simplest and the easiest way of doing it. So we're going to shape it into a rope like so, and you want to get it to about, I would say 12 to 15 inches long. Right now we are 12. I'm going to try and see if I can stretch it a little bit more. Even 12 inches is fine, but because this is the end piece, I'm gonna try and stretch it as much as I can to even it out, okay? Let's see where we're at right now. That's about 14 inches, that should be fine. So I'm gonna grab one end after we have the rope, try to pick the nicer side of the rope too, and start rolling it and shaping it into a coil like so. We're not pinching it, we're not tightening it at all. You want to keep it as loose as possible and just basically shape it into the perfect coil. And once you get to the end, you're going to take the end piece, tuck it under, and there's your first pan de Mallorca roll. And I'll be using a tray that has been lined with some silicone, and that's just going to help for the buns not to stick. And these are actually very neat because it actually has the different slots and places where you can put your buns. In this case, you want to try and keep your buns from the sides because they are going to rise, and usually they double in size, and when they bake they grow in the oven. So you want to make sure you leave some room and give it space so that it can rise and double. Let's go ahead and set that one aside and take the next piece. This time I'm going to show you the fancy way that I like to roll my pan de Mallorca, and I'm just going to basically flatten it. And I want to get it to about 1.5 inches wide. Doesn't have to be precise, it's just that we need some room. Because in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be folding the strips into thirds. And that's simply done by folding this side inwards like this, pressing lightly. We're not pressing too hard, we're just pressing lightly. And then we're going to take the other piece and pinch it over the top, like so. Hopefully you can see that there. Otherwise, I'll see if I can bring you a little bit closer or from a different angle so that you can see the action of what I'm doing here. Okay. What this does is when it bakes, it creates an air pocket or a vent. We'll repeat the same process and roll it into a coil. They are definitely ready for the oven, And in the bowl right here, we have an egg that I mixed with about a tablespoon of water to make an egg wash. And I'm gonna brush it over the top of the buns. I have the oven preheating at 350 degrees. And these babies are going to bake for about 15 to 20 minutes or until light golden brown. The pan de Mallorca took about 17 minutes in the oven, and as you can see, they're nice and golden brown, especially the tops, and that's due to the egg wash that we gave them. But check it out, they're beautiful, smells amazing, and I really can't wait to try it. For now, we just have to allow the buns to cool completely. Once they've cooled, I'm going to give it a light dusting of powdered sugar, and most importantly, I'm going to try them. And just like that, we made these delicious pan de Mallorca or sweet bread. Check it out. For more delicious recipes like this one, consider subscribing, give me a thumbs up and comment for the YouTube algorithm, and activate the notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos. And until next time, I'm Evita, Cooks and Preps. Bon appetit! You really have to try it.